All right, so throughout the program, you're going to hear me talk about lifting the pelvic floor, tightening the pelvic floor, because a lot of moms, their pelvic floor is really tight. Now, on the other hand, there may be some of you who have the opposite end where your pelvic floor is too tight. And so that's where we want to no longer focus on lifting the pelvic floor and tightening the pelvic floor, but we want to teach and retrain the pelvic floor to relax. All right. So if you hear me say with any exercises that you're following throughout the program or any other places, and you know that your pelvic floor is tight, then you want to basically ignore you want to ignore that cue, and you want to focus on relaxing your pelvic floor. All right. And so what do we do with that? So if you are in the program and you hear me say, okay, now lift and draw up your pelvic floor, all right, on the exhale. So you inhale, relax, feel that belly up and your rib cage up, that good 360 breath, and relax the pelvic floor. Now on the on the exhale, you're going to just relax your pelvic floor. You're not going to lift, because lifting it is also synonymous with tightening it, and we don't want to do that, or strengthening it, and we want to just get those muscles to relax right now in this phase. So what are some of these signs and symptoms of an overactive or a pelvic floor that is too tight? So signs like difficulty initiating urine, having certain urges to pee, painful intercourse or penetration, leaking when you're jumping or you're running, just as you would a weak pelvic floor. So you can get leaking on both ends. Also constipation, also difficulty with relaxing your pelvic floor fully. So when we're working on that 360 breathing, and I say to fill up your lungs and your belly with air and get that pelvic floor to relax, it feels like you just can't get it to relax all the way down to the bottom. So that is a sign that, again, that your pelvic floor is too overactive or too tight. You also have difficulty getting a good pelvic floor contraction. So when I'm saying to lift the pelvic floor, it's just like something's blocking it. You can't really get a good pelvic floor contraction. That's another sign. And you don't have to have every last one of these signs and symptoms, but you may notice a combination of some as a sign of your pelvic floor being tight. Also, you may get persistent SI joint, back, or hip pain. A lot of time pain is associated with the weakness. So there's some compensation going on somewhere, hence your pelvic floor having to work too much. And so that is also signs of having an overactive pelvic floor. And then lastly, you're just not getting any relief, or you're getting increased pain with the traditional exercises. So where, again, traditionally we're telling you to lift the pelvic floor, we're asking you to contract the pelvic floor, then those things are not getting you anywhere. If anything, it's taking you backwards. And then that's also a sign that your pelvic floor may be tight. So what are some of the causes of your pelvic floor being tight in the first place? Stress. Just like you have people who have like TMJ issues where they clench their jaws and they're just in their neck, and they hold stress in their shoulders, and they're just a tense person, and their muscles hold stress. Well, your pelvic floor is a muscle. And so if you have a stressful job, or you have a stressful moment and season in life, you can hold stress and tension in your pelvic floor. So that can be causing your pelvic floor to be too tight. And let me also say this may be something that you may have been dealing with for years and you have no idea that you were. And so once you begin a program, or you start to heal your diastasis, or you work to now what you think is a weak pelvic floor, start to work on it, and you realize, oh no, it wasn't weak, it was actually too tight. And so this may be a surprise to you, and it may have been laying kind of dormant and been tight the whole time, but you've now learned to function in the dysfunction, and now you realize, oh, I do have a tight pelvic floor. So that's not uncommon either. overtraining your pelvic floor. So again, you didn't know that you had a tight pelvic floor, and then you start to tighten, or you're kegling and holding them too long or doing them too often, then that too can go from one end of the spectrum of being weak to now being overactive, and you can have an overactive pelvic floor that way as well. Compensating. So say that you have weak glutes or a weak core, then your pelvic floor is having to work too hard or too much. And again, it becomes overactive or become too tight. And then lastly, your posture and your alignment. So if you are not in good alignment and you're doing things in exercises in a program, or you're doing exercises throughout my program, and you're not in good alignment or you're not using good posture, that too can cause your pelvic floor to be tight. So if you tend to be a glute clencher, and you tend to be in more of a posterior pelvic tilt, that too can cause your pelvic floor to be too tight. So those are some of the things to look out for, to know, do I have an over tight or a overactive pelvic floor? Those are some signs and symptoms to look for. So next we're going to talk about how to actually treat this tight pelvic floor, and we can get it to relax so that we can get back to strengthening the pelvic floor again.